Hi there, I'm Roux, and welcome to Crime Lime. This episode is extra special because it's going to be posted on the week of Halloween, so of course, it's Halloween themed. And the case I'm going to talk about in this episode is the Halloween murder. This is a Norwegian case, and you probably haven't heard of it, so extra interesting, huh? So this case took place in 2011 in Oslo, aka Norway's capital. So the main players of this story are four guys, four friends. Three of them live together in an apartment. The three that live together in an apartment is Marius Løken, Ben, and Lars. Now, because of laws in Norway, a lot of cases don't actually reveal the perpetrator's name, and that is why the perpetrator has been given a fake name in this video. Also, the other roommate was never named, so that's why two people have fake names, just so you'll follow along with the story. The fourth person in this story is Andreas Nilstad. So the four guys are hanging out in the apartment of Lars, Ben, and Marius on the 30th of October 2011. They're all pre-partying, hanging out, having a good time. After a while, Andreas and Marius decide to go out to a Halloween party, while the other two, Lars and Ben, decide to stay home. The two staying home, they hang out for a little while before going to bed. And because Andreas has left his keys in the three other guys' apartment, he decides to stay over because, they've been drinking, having a good time, he might as well stay over. So Marius and Andreas comes home from the Halloween party and they sleep in Marius's room. They go to bed, everyone in the apartment is now sleeping. Until Ben wakes up with a full-on anxiety episode. He is not feeling well, he is feeling extremely mentally disturbed and upset and full of anxiety. Ben decides to calm himself down by going online and reading the Bible online. Unfortunately, this only makes things worse because he has a mental condition, underlying condition, which makes him prone to lose grip on reality. He has experienced this twice before, and he was hoping that reading the Bible would calm him down, except it doesn't, and what happens is truly horrifying. Because after reading the Bible, when he was this upset and having an episode, he goes on into a full-on psychotic break, where he becomes convinced that A, he's going to die, and B, he's going to be reborn as Jesus Christ. He becomes so convinced that he has been given this revelation that he's going to be reborn as Jesus Christ, and that he has to kill himself for this to happen. But in his psychotic state, he becomes really sad and thinks, oh, but I would want my friends to join. I wouldn't want to die and return to a new life without my friends. So he decides to kill them too. Now, everyone else in the apartment are fully asleep while he's having these thoughts. But Andreas and Marius are abruptly awakened by Ben coming into their bedroom, starting to stab them. He has gotten a knife from the kitchen, and he is stabbing Andreas. Both of them, of course, are in shock, and, it's just out of nowhere. All of these people are best friends. It's not like this is oh yeah, we don't get along, and all of a sudden he's stabbing us. This is literally their best friend that just came into the bedroom and started stabbing them. So Marius is saying, oh my god, what are you doing? Dude, what are you doing? Which doesn't make Ben stop, but does divert his attention because he started stabbing Andreas first, and now his attention is on Marius, and he starts stabbing him in the torso. Marius is somehow able to fight Ben off and gets out of the apartment. He tries to run out of the apartment. Ben is chasing him, and he's running down the apartment complex, down the stairwell, with Ben chasing him. Several times he gets caught up by Ben, and Ben overpowers him and literally is just going crazy, stabbing him in the stairwell. And every time Marius is unable to fight him off, he gets a stab in. Eventually, Marius is able to fight him off again, gets up, runs down the stairwell, and gets outside. By this time, Marius has 15 stab wounds all over his torso and down his neck and face. He is just covered in blood. And he is just convinced that he's going to die because they're in an area where to get to help, he might have to walk a bit. And with a deranged killer on his heels, he's really afraid that he's not going to be able to make it. Almost by divine intervention, right outside of their apartment building is a taxi. Like, the taxi driver was either picking someone up or he had just driven someone there. Now Marius is able to run over to the taxi and he's like, oh my god, please help me, I need help. He gets into the taxi. The taxi driver, understandably, since now it's technically the 31st, aka Halloween, he's like, oh, this is an excessive Halloween costume, like you're full of blood. This is a bit, crazy. Please don't rub the fake blood into my taxi. But as he sees that the blood is just gushing out and Marius is saying, please help me, I'm dying, he's like, oh my god, this is for real. The taxi driver's name is Ashar Munir. So he gets Marius down to the hospital. The passenger in the taxi, I think, called the hospital so they were prepared for him coming. So they get him to the hospital and he survives. Unfortunately, Andreas, the guy who was stabbed first, they were taken completely off guard because both of them were sleeping. So the only reason really that Marius survived was because he wasn't attacked first. So he woke up. But Andreas had no warning. He was literally just sleeping and all of a sudden he's being stabbed to death. So sadly, he did not survive. In the meantime, the cops go to the apartment and they find Ben in the backyard, spread-eagled on the grass. He's also full of stab wounds because he has tried to stab himself to death because he's convinced that he's Jesus Christ, that he's going to be reborn as Jesus Christ. So he has been stabbing himself in the neck and torso and arms and just everywhere. So the police show up. I don't know why, but the police officers say that, okay, so I find this guy in the backyard. He's spread eagle, like full of blood. He's the perpetrator of this horrible crime. We know that. I turn around to radio my fellow police. When I turn around again, he's not lying spread eagle on the ground anymore. I don't understand. Why would you turn your back on someone who's just stabbed to death someone else and gone on like a crazy stabbing spree? But okay. Luckily, he didn't do anything to the cop though, but when the cop turns around, he's standing there with his arms stretched out like towards the police officer and he goes, "There's just too many of us, I want to die." Kind of like there's too many people in the world or something like that and he wants to die. Like he's full on psychotic break. They also find that Ben, while Marius had gotten away, Ben has been writing on the wall in the apartment complex, and he has written God in his own blood in the entryway of the apartment complex. He is obviously not well. They find Andreas, he is already deceased. They find him in the apartment. I don't know how the third roommate didn't wake up. That like blows my mind, but some people are really heavy sleepers. So the third roommate, Losh, never woke up and he just slept through the whole thing apparently. So they arrest Ben and they take him in and he's put into like a hospital stretcher because he is not okay. He is full of stab wounds, self-inflicted, and he is not mentally there. They arrest him and he is put on trial. Now this is a very interesting case because you know how a lot of cases are like, oh, I'm just gonna plead insanity and get away with it? This is one of those cases where it's actually legit, where someone is literally, they had a psychotic break and they were insane, like they're not culpable. Like one of the actual cases of that. So during the trial, the prosecution tried really hard, and I think this is really unfair. They tried really hard to try to convict him as if he was culpable, even though he was full-on psychotic break and he has had a underlying psychological mental condition for his whole life apparently, And he has never been violent before, so he didn't know that that would happen. But he wasn't in his right mind, and he wasn't to blame for what happened. Like, he just was not there, basically. You know what I mean? And the prosecution were like, oh, we really need to find someone to blame for this. That's something I really don't like about the Norwegian justice system. A lot of the time, accidental deaths where it's not really, you can't really blame anyone, either be it an accident or if someone was legit insane, they still try really hard to find someone to blame. And I really don't like that. Like, sometimes it's just an accident, you know? Sometimes there is no one to blame. But the Norwegian justice system is really like gung-ho on, we need to find a culprit for this, to fix it, to like close the book and be done with it. I don't know. So Ben was like checked out by multiple doctors, psychologists, and overwhelming amount of them thought that he was not culpable, as in he was not in his right mind while it was happening, and it was not because of anything that he did or did not do. It was not with malicious intent. He literally had no control of what happened. Although one doctor was like, actually, like, maybe it was because he was like drinking and smoking weed. Maybe that's what did it. In the Norwegian law, it's like if you took a substance and that made you do something horrible, you're culpable, because then you've chosen to take a substance and that substance made you act like a lunatic. And they tried really hard to pin it on him because of that, like really hard to be like, oh, then you're to blame. Especially trying to focus on, oh, he's had psychotic breaks before where he was like smoking weed or drinking alcohol, and that's definitely what triggers it. However, that's not actually true, because he has had psychotic breaks before, but not all of them were accompanied by alcohol or weed. So it's just something that sometimes happens to him because he has a mental, chemical, brain thing condition. It's not because he drank alcohol or weed. It's not that triggers it. It could just happen at any time. Fortunately, the judge did see that and did rule in his favor that he was mentally not competent to stand trial. And instead of being like prosecuted as a murderer who murdered someone, as in like he did it on purpose and he knew what he was doing and therefore he gets to go to prison, he was put into a mental institution instead, where he's forced to serve a certain amount of time in the mental institution until he gets better. Which I think is much better. Like, imagine killing your friends, your best friends in the whole wide world, and you didn't even know what you were doing and you had no control over it. Like, that is just so sad. And I just gotta say, Ben never fought any of it. He was like, I didn't know what I was doing and I don't remember it. I didn't do it on purpose, but I do admit that I did these things and I do want you to prosecute. Like, he took all of the sentencing. Like, he didn't fight any of it. He didn't appeal it or anything. He knew that he needed help. So it's not like he was like trying to weasel his way out and like trying to get away with it and get acquitted. No. He took responsibility for it and he desperately needs help. I thought it was really shitty by the prosecution to say like, oh, we're so disappointed that we didn't get to like prosecute him as like mentally competent at the time, because we really wanted to put him in jail for 16 years. Like, if someone legit had a psychotic break, that is hella unfair. And you're just looking for someone to blame when there really isn't anyone to blame for what happened, you know? Like, freak shit happens, accidents happens, and you can't just constantly be in the mindset of, we need someone to blame for this. That's just not how the real world works. That is just not how, like, you can't be black and white about that when it comes to stuff like this. So he was in psychological care for a number of years, but he has since been released. So he has gotten better and has been released. And I hope he has a good life. I hope he doesn't blame himself for it, because it's just one of those things where it's not your fault, you know? It's gotta be so hard to live with, though. Marius, the guy who survived, actually wrote a book about his experiences, and he says that he doesn't hold a grudge against Ben because he knows that Ben was just not well. Yeah, he forgives him, but he can't really have a relationship with him, and I understand that, like, it's gotta be hard to have a relationship or see someone who stabbed your friend to death in front of you, even if it is your former best friend who did the thing. It's really heartbreaking to think about because Andreas, the guy who died, had actually just been informed by his girlfriend that she was pregnant, and he was really excited to be a dad, and he had like gone out at the Halloween party to like celebrate with his guys, like, oh yeah, it's so cool, like, celebrate, I'm gonna be a dad. And then he gets murdered, and that little girl is gonna grow up without her dad, and it's so sad. Because Ben was technically like in a psychotic break, wasn't mentally accountable for what happened, although the judge sentenced him to pay 2.6 million kroners, Norwegian crowns, to the victims, aka the girlfriend and the daughter, and the parents of Andreas. He only had to pay 225,639 of that, because that's like a rule that the Norwegian justice system has. If someone isn't able to be mentally accountable for something and they are like mentally ill and that's why they committed a crime, there's like a threshold. So the rest of the money is paid by taxpayers, I guess. It's a crazy case, really is. It's very interesting too. Do you agree with the Norwegian justice system? What do you think about the prosecution? I personally think they were kind of being assholes and being really bloodthirsty when you're dealing with someone who literally had a mental psychotic break, and that's just not the time to be bloodthirsty and try to like get like hardcore and throw down the hammer on someone. Do comment below what you think about it, if you thought it was an interesting video. Thank you so much to my wonderful patrons, Katbra, Madayana Jaworska, Ono Balloons, Ellie, and Splackjack. You make this possible. If anyone's interested in supporting this new series, there's a link below. Don't forget to join me next Wednesday when we delve into the case of Madeleine McCann, missing for over a decade.